Hello, everyone. This is Select. I am back already because I have some polls I need to talk about. It is about the midterm of this election cycle. It is about probably another 18 months before we get another Australian federal election. The last one we had was, I think, like 17 months ago. So it is time now that we have all these polls that have just been released to take a look at where everything stands, and just kind of have maybe a prediction of how things are going to go. I mean, it's still pretty far away, but we could talk about where we've come from as well from this term. Um, I guess we'll just get started. So what you have here, this mess of a Twitter post, this is the best I can get for the news poll quarterlies, which have just been released. We've got all kinds of fun things with great annotations from this Twitter poster. Better Prime Minister Albanese still ahead. We've got Albanese's performance. He's kind of middling, hanging around net zero satisfaction. Dutton still, about minus 15. Not too happy. We've got the primary votes. This is probably the most interesting part of this whole thing. Um, we have Labor ducking below 40 in most states. The only state that they're hitting 40 is South Australia. I believe earlier in the year and last year they were hitting the early 40s in most states. So it's just a show of how Labor have kind of fallen. I will note that this is actually a different company doing the polls than the last news poll. I believe the last one was YouGov, and this one it's something else, but it's not YouGov. It's a new company, so their methodology is probably different. But I believe that the YouGov is still doing polling. If we go on to I've got this tab right open right here, so that's what we need. Yeah, they're still doing polling, and the most recent poll for them was 53-47. So if we go back to this, so it's pretty similar. And yeah, so the Labour are down, the Coalition are up a bit. We have hit a point in the election cycle where there has been some narrowing. It's not quite as obvious on this poll aggregate. It's more obvious on the poll bludger aggregate. On this one, it's very obvious that there is some narrowing definitely going on. The coalition are ahead. I don't believe this takes into account the Morgan poll that was just released, and maybe some other polls. Actually, no, I think it's just the Morgan poll, which we will get to in a second. Yeah, there's Labour are down on the primary vote. Greens are on 12, which is basically where they were on the election. One Nation are up a bit since the election. And there we go, two party vote 54-46 over the time period. So the other thing we need to talk about is this headline poll released by Roy Morgan today, finding the coalition ahead 50.5 to 49, where the coalition have been ahead. If we go over here, you'll see that, yeah, the coalition have never been ahead on a single opinion poll until now. So this is a big deal, and this is I would say this is somewhat some evidence that definitely the honeymoon period has ended for Labor, for Albanese. Many believe that the honeymoon period kind of started to end around like May, around when the voice referendum started to narrow as well. It kind of coincided with it. Who knows what this poll means? I mean, only like a week ago, as you can see here, Labor were on 35%, LNP were on 34%, Greens were on 14%. And suddenly, apparently in a week, according to Morgan poll, Labor have jumped down to 32 by 3%. Coalition have gone up 2%. Greens have stayed the same. One Nation is on 4.5%, which is actually pretty low for them. And then Independents on 8.5 and other parties on 5%. I actually don't know how they got to this number of 50.5%. I think it might be respondent allocated preferences, which are usually not very reliable, because like this is actually these numbers are actually pretty close to what the last election was. I mean, ALP was on, I think, 32 or 33%. Um, Coalition were on about 36%, and the Greens were on about, I think, 12.5%. I mean, the One Nation were a bit lower. So I don't know how they got this number. I think somebody else did their own like last election preferences and got like 53-47 or something. I looked at this and I say that sounds a bit more accurate. So I don't actually think this poll is. I mean, I guess like whoever was choosing preferences on this poll, whoever really like wasn't happy with the Labour Party, but apparently that's not quite reliable. And yeah, I just based on last election preferences, this doesn't look that bad of a election poll for Labour. And as I said, like only a week ago, it was very different from the same pollster. So I don't know whether to trust this poll. I guess we'll give it a bit of time to see what it's like next week. I want to talk a little bit about the most recent Resolve Strategic. Now, this is a very favorable poll for Labour. I believe it has Labour ahead. Two party prefer like 57-43. As you can see here, like the national like primary vote for Labour is like 37, LNP is like 31, Greens saying the same, whatever. This was earlier this month, so it was a little while ago. So this is another poll that is somewhat recent, and it actually has like state by state breakdowns where New South Wales not too great for Labor, Victoria, pretty good for Labor, Queensland, yeah, pretty much what you expect, and then the rest of Australia, Labor's apparently doing really well on 40% primary vote, LNP on 28, so not so good there. And yeah, Albanese is definitely ahead on the preferred prime minister. They don't think Albo's doing great. Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing where he's got like a net zero satisfaction rating. Dutton's a bit behind. For some reason, even though Labour Party have delivered like the first budget, like the coalition couldn't deliver a budget surplus at all. Labour Party delivered this like $22 billion budget surplus, but people still aren't happy. They still say the Liberals are better at economic management, but of course, that's the narrative at all time. And everyone thinks that the Labour Party are going to win. So that's just some interesting stuff here from Resolve Strategic. So how this data that we've got here, how will this play out for the next election? Now, I want to look mostly at the news poll quarterlies because I do believe these are the most accurate. I mean, in history, they've been the most accurate. And we can talk a little bit about what the kind of swings that we can see on this news poll quarterly would mean for the kind of seats that would be lost. So let's go over to the post-election pendulum of the 2022 federal election. These are the kind of margins that we have. The only outlier here is Aston. This was we also have, I guess we have Fadden as well, but that one doesn't matter because it's a safe seat, so it doesn't really matter. But this was won by the Labour Party in a by-election, so this one is already in the Labour column, and I believe if we go to actually that division, the margin is like 3.57%. So that's what that is. So I've already sort of like, based on the news poll quarterlies, I've already kind of worked out what kind of seats will be changing hands if the swings were uniform. And here we go. So we've got Sturt, Bass, Dixon, and who's that? Banks. And then we've got Aston, of course, there is already switching hands. And then we've got also that the coalition will pick up Tangney probably off of the Labour Party. So these are all just uniform swings. And, like, can you really trust news polls, data from each state? I mean, I don't know. But, this is what they're saying. They're saying that Labour have a bit of a swing on them in South Australia. They've got a bit of a swing on them in Tasmania, which is very hard to poll usually. They've got like a 2% swing on them in Queensland, and they've got like a 4% swing on them in New South Wales or something like that. And there's only like one marginal classic coalition versus Labour seat within that margin, and that is Banks. So the swing in New South Wales isn't really like a huge deal. And then we've got Western Australia. There's a swing against Labor a little bit because remember, if it was a massive sort of wipeout last time, what's his name is gone. WA Premier, I have a mind blank. I forgot his name. He's gone, and the WA Labor has definitely lost some of its sheen. So Tangney will probably go back to the coalition. I mean, based on those polls, at least it's saying that. And then we also have at least one other seat here. If we go back to the browser, that is definitely one that we would want to question, and that is the division of Lingiari. We do not have polling of the Northern Territory. I believe it's a very hard place to poll. Lingiari I've got a map here of the no vote. It got 56.1%, which isn't a really strong seat for Solomon was a much firmer no, but Lingiari it did go no. So that's one definitely to look at. That's definitely one that the coalition will be campaigning for. They'll probably get Jacinta Price out there in Lingiari trying to win that seat. We've also got, where is it? Where is Solomon? Yeah, it's all the way down here. So yeah, I don't know about that one. 9.37%. I don't think that one's really one that we'll be worrying about. But yeah, Lingiari is definitely one. So going back again to this, what you'll notice is in this point, based on this news poll polling, it's not looking like Labour is really going to be picking up many seats. So, I mean, if you just look at this and we assume that Lingiari is going to stay with Labour, Labour's going to pick up Banks, Dixon, Bass, and Sturt, and then lose Tangney. So they'll have net 3 seats. Future me here just wanted to mention that there will be a redistribution. I believe that 2 seats are being lost in one in Victoria, one in New South Wales, and a seat is being gained in WA. So these margins will change, but I thought it was worth still looking at the margins as they are and swings as they are. I also mentioned that the seat of Bass is sort of an outlier because the member Richard Archer is quite a high profile these days. She's known for crossing the floor, being quite progressive. I don't know how that is going to affect her election, if it's going to save her. But I guess it's always hard to poll Tasmania anyway, so we don't really know if there's going to be a swing on that seat. So yeah, Bass is definitely not one that the Labor Party are sure about getting anyway. So I mean, none of these seats are, but especially Bass has a big question mark. So they'll be up to 81 seats, which, I mean, it's an election win. It's definitely an election win, but it's absolutely nothing really that impressive. I mean, I guess it gets the job done, but you would hope that at this point in the campaign, a year and a half out, you would have sort of more of a buffer, more of a space to lose than you do right now. And Labour, as we've seen through these, I mean, it's more obvious on the poll bludger where there is definitely a narrowing. It's less obvious on Wikipedia, and I think this is actually missing some polls. Like, for example, doesn't have the most recent Roy Morgan. Let's see if it's there. I'll refresh the page. Nope. It doesn't have the Roy Morgan before this. It actually doesn't have the state breakdowns for the result strategic either, I believe. So if we go down to the state breakdowns, they're all like really, they're all really old. The last result strategic that they put on here. So yeah, this page is a little bit it's missing some data. So I don't know if the editors of Wikipedia have some kind of bias and they want to be like, oh, Labour's there's no narrowing, there's nothing going on here. I mean, Labour, the polling before this Roy Morgan poll, there was some I feel like there was some showing of Labour going back out again with that most recent news poll, 54-46. That result strategic poll. Um, but then you get polls like this Roy Morgan poll, which say the opposite. But last week's poll said something entirely different. So, is there a real is it really obvious that Labour are narrowing according to these news poll quarterlies? I believe so because I think they were in a much better position last um, quarter. Once again, these are different pollsters, so maybe that could be why. But I think that it's a good observation to say yes, there has been a little bit of narrowing, at least a little bit of narrowing. Labour aren't quite in the position that they were 6 months ago. Things are not looking as good for them as they were 6 months ago, and they would have liked. I think they would like to see a bit better. But maybe this is the sort of the rut period for Labour at the moment. Maybe this is like, the voice referendum has failed. It's been something they've been working towards. Albo's got pie all over his face. Maybe this is Albo's down point. Maybe he will improve from here. Like it's the middle of the term. Like the polls are. I think they were the worst in the middle of the term. Usually, I think like in the UK, people are talking about how Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives are probably going to improve by the election. I'd say that I think it's a safe bet to say that Labour would do that. They would also improve by the election. I don't think that you can really write them off quite yet. Like these polls, like as I said, this is an outlier. This is really an outlier poll. We haven't seen anything like this, and it could change again completely in the next week. Roy Morgan is not I don't think it's the most reliable pollster. They weren't correct on the voice referendum. They had yes behind 45-55 when the result was more like 61-39, which News Poll had spot on. So it seems a bit weird to say like, oh, they overestimated the yes vote, but they're underestimating Labour. But it just means that maybe their methodology's off or something. I don't know. Okay. So basically, all I'm going to say here is that Labour could be in a better position. They have probably narrowed a bit in the polls. People probably don't view them as highly. When it comes to Albo's like satisfaction, that's definitely the case. I think most polls are pointing to that. The Albo has definitely lost his sheen. So I guess if you look at this, you would think, okay, well, I think this Wikipedia page actually does suggest that as well. Albanese's approval rating, Dutton's kind of like, and then like, who's a better leader? Do they have that on here? Let's see. Here we go. Yeah. So it's not as obvious here, but yeah, like there is a little bit of narrowing. But yeah, they can improve from here. This is definitely a rut. This is definitely if there's any time where Labour has bad polling, it would be now after this voice referendum thing has happened. And they just look like complete fools, and they look like idiots, and they look like they completely out of touch with Australia. That's when they'll be failing. Right. So enough talking about Labour. Let's talk about some other parties. So I won't touch. I'll talk a little bit about the coalition and what they might be looking up like to pick up from Labour. And they'll be looking at the voice referendum and saying like, okay, we're like moving to this like socially conservative. Dunn's always been like that. He's always been like the socially conservative guy. I guess he's economically conservative too, but I think the social conservativeness is more sort of pronounced. So they're moving to this more socially conservative image. What kind of like seats can we target? Like what kind of seats would that appeal to? I think like looking at the results of the voice referendum, is a sort of a clue to that. I definitely think that there is. I mean, Banks. This is one of the seats I'm saying is going to switch hands, and this was 61.4% no. So if that's anything to judge, then it's not gonna move. I don't think it's as I talked about in the last video with Solomon. I don't think the who voted no is really a great representative of who will vote for the coalition. I just think it's sort of a clue as to which seats are sort of kind of more socially conservative and what kind of seats the Dutton could be sort of pointing to. So it's actually really hard to find the right seats. But here's Gilmore, and that's a very God, I've got so many tabs open. That's a very marginal seat, so that's one that they'll be looking for. Lyons, I believe, also was pretty heavily on the no camp. It's 68%. That's pretty high. So oh God, I've got so many fucking tabs open. We already talked about Lingiari. Benelong, I think, was pretty high on the yes, so that's not one that they're really going to be looking at. Higgins, that's lost. That's lost. We'll talk a little bit more about the teal seats in a second, but I don't believe like Robinson. I mean McEwen, like where's McEwen? Oh, that's up there. Okay, I see. Okay, I mean I guess we can look at that one. I have no idea about McEwen. Where is it? God, this map is so. I mean, I should have just got like a normal map, but this one is like cool. McEwen 60, so it's like basically the national average. So I mean, maybe that's not going to really mean anything if it's just the national average. I don't know. So yeah. I mean, Patterson is a pretty socially conservative seat. I've also got this, which the seats more over to here are more sort of socially progressive, and the seats over here are more socially conservative. I believe yes. Wait, no. This down here is more socially conservative. Up here, sorry, this I actually have not slept for more than 24 hours. So I'm a bit confused. So yeah, this is the sort of socially conservative. This is the socially progressive. It's very much they kind of are hand in hand, but there are some sort of outliers. I mean, this seat is it's very interesting, this graph actually, because you've got like something like Wentworth, which is clearly sort of an outlier. It's like more economically conservative, but it's sort of more socially progressive. And then you've got Kooyong, Higgins. It's actually really interesting how Mayo, all these sort of Teal, Goldstein, North Sydney, Curtin, all these sort of Teal seats are like outliers on this graph. It's actually very, very interesting. Griffith went to the Greens, as you might know. McNamara, we'll talk about a little bit about that seat later. Bradfield, which we will also talk about later. Yeah. So I don't know. This is very interesting. It's very interesting how this. I mean, it's Vote Compass. It's not like the most accurate thing ever. They only had like 20 questions, and they were all framed about the election. They weren't like general topics, really. I mean, there were things like, do you want to increase tax? Do you want to give more money to welfare and stuff like that? So I guess those things are pretty standard. But yeah. I mean, I don't think it's the most accurate, but it is quite telling how sort of things sort of ended up with these outliers. Or maybe I read too much into this. I don't know. But yeah, the outliers sort of here when it comes to the Labour seats are seats like Blair in Queensland, which is a marginal seat. Rankin, that's not going anywhere. Lily's not going anywhere. Oxley is... Where's Oxley? I don't think that's marginal at all. Yeah, that's nothing. But Blair is here. So this is all the kind of seats that Werriwa is here, and I want to see where that voted on. There we go, 63. So there is basically a big question at the moment. Are the coalition, because they've basically they've given up on these Teal seats, they've given up on these seats, they've lost to the Greens up here, and once again I find it very, very interesting that the only seats that voted yes in Queensland are the Green seats. It's just this kind of, it's weird how things just kind of fit together like this. It's kind of odd. It's kind of strange. Very, very strange. But the coalition, yeah. So they've basically given up on these seats like Ryan and Brisbane, which they had before. I don't forget Newcastle, but I mean, Bradfield is one that the Teals would be looking at. They almost got there last time. They were like 5% off. But the member for Bradfield was a strong supporter of the Yes campaign. He actually was the Indigenous minister, as I was learned from Storman on our last video. He was the Indigenous minister before he got kicked off because he supported the Voice and he couldn't be in the cabinet. So you would assume he'd probably be safe because there won't be backlash for the Voice against him. I mean, even if I don't know if the Teal seat people care that much about the Voice, but there is sort of an assumption that like it will sort of hurt Dutton's image, and so like, this guy's so out of touch, that he's like, because I think that there are probably a lot of people in these Teal seats that do believe that the No campaign or Dutton was in bad faith, as I sort of talked about in my last video. So I think it will have an effect. I don't think it'll have like a huge effect where it's like, oh no, these seats are completely unwinnable because of this. But I think it would definitely will hurt Dutton's chances by the fact that basically every single Teal seat. The only exception is McKellar, which is a maybe. Voted yes, including Curtin in WA. I guess like if you count Mayo as a Teal seat, then that's a no. But that's owned by Centre Alliance, so like it's not a Teal. She's not an independent. It's not. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Rebecca Sharkey didn't sort of join that Teal independent movement, because Mayo is a different demographic to these other seats. But yeah, okay, so the assumption is that after basically Dutton has given up on all these seats, including Higgins, which has Labour, Goldstein, Kooyong, there we go, Kooyong. They've given up on these seats, and now it's time to win by winning back suburban Conservative seats. I mean, they could win back just by going after Gilmore, Lyons, Lingiari, maybe Robertson, Tangney, which we've already talked about. McEwen, Patterson, Boothby's a no, because that almost voted yes, so I don't think that's one that they'll be going after. Hunter Parramatta, so I mean, I'm literally just listing out marginal seats, but these are sort of more socially conservative seats, and that's what their aim is now. Their aim is, we forget the Teals, we're just going to go after these Labour Party marginal seats, which are socially conservative, which voted no, which might agree with Dutton that it was a big waste of money with the yes referendum, and this is the kind of things that Albo is focusing on, this Voice thing, and you clearly didn't want it. You clearly saw it for the big, I don't know, time waster it was, and so you would want to vote for the coalition as well come next election. So I think that's what Dutton's plan is. Just not Reid, maybe Shortland, maybe Dorbell, maybe Werriwa. I don't think they'll win Hasluck. We'll see how that voted though. So I have no idea. Okay, well, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, that's the plan. That's the plan for Dutton. Forget the Teals. That's over. I mean, okay, but actually, I say this, but I just that will be probably enough. Like these seats, I don't know how many seats I listed off, but winning a lot of these seats is probably enough to turf Labour out of government. But to get back into government for the coalition, I believe that they've got 59 seats or something. So what is that, 17 seats or something like that? Taking that off Labour, I mean, that's going to be a hard ask. It's going to be a hard ask. But that's what the plan will be. I think that Dutton has screwed himself on the Teal seats. I don't see how he's going to get them anymore. It's going to be down to all of these a seat like Werriwa, I mean, this is basically a must-win seat for Labour, for the coalition. Sorry, the Country Party had it in the 30s, but apart from that, and it's probably completely probably different boundaries at that point as well. It's been a Labour seat the whole way. Um, but this is the kind of seat that the coalition are going to target. I believe Dobell is a marginal seat, but it's been with Labour since 2016. Patterson, that's a marginal seat. But yeah, 2016 as well. Um, yeah, so that's the plan. That's the plan, and it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough for them. And I don't think Albo has been bruised enough quite yet that it's looking like it's going to be a win for the coalition. But maybe getting Labour down to a minority government, so that they need the Teals or they need Greens or they need other people like Bob Katter and Rebecca Sharkey. Maybe that's just their plan. Maybe that's just Dutton's plan. That's good enough for him. Maybe even if he does that, he'll stay as leader. He probably will stay as leader. I mean, if you look at what happened with Tony Abbott in 2010, he stayed as leader and then he won the next election. So that's probably Dutton's plan. He's probably just running in Tony Abbott's shadows. So I want to talk a little bit about the Greens and their prospects. One Nation, we will talk about them in the Senate. I don't think they have any prospects for the lower house unless they're going to do some kind of like grassroots campaign or something. I don't think they're organized enough to do something like that. And I think the Nationals are sort of too popular. And they're just basically indestructible at this point in the National Party. Like you can't. Labour Party are not even trying. They're popular amongst their base. Like maybe some independents can turf them off, but like One Nation are not going to win anything in the lower house unless they have some big money and this massive plan behind them. And that goes for the Clive Palmer Party as well if they're even going to do anything next election. So the Greens. The question is with the Greens, can they do any better than they have already? So a lot of people believe, I believe, that the last federal election for the Greens was amazing. 4 seats. They went from 1 seat to 4 seats. And we've always been wondering about, if Greens are going to pick up one more seat or something like that. Are they going to win Cooper? That was about it. Like Cooper, are they going to win Higgins? Maybe like Higgins was the other one. So they've got these 3 seats in Queensland. I don't believe they can pick up any more seats in Queensland because these are the only ones who voted yes. And I think voting yes is a good indication of the kind of seat that the Greens could possibly pick up. So let's go over some possible seats for the Greens. I mean, their finances are low, so they have to do specific targeted seats. So they can't go for all of these, but these are all just sort of possible seats. Maybe in the future the Greens could win, based on the voice referendum. And I mean, I didn't look up statistics about like renters or something like that. That's definitely something they could look at. But I think the problem with the Greens is that their economic policies get way too outshined by their social policies. And if you don't agree with their social policies, things like worrying about climate change, social justice, if you don't agree with those things, or you just don't care, or you just think that they're lame, you're probably going to switch off from them. You're probably not going to want to vote for them, and you'll just vote for Labour probably if you're a poor person, if you're low income. So you need to they need to be into that kind of stuff, and also into they have to also be they low income, and they want to vote Greens to help themselves, or they're like they're rich and they're woke and they vote Greens because they're rich enough that like if they get taxed to oblivion they don't care. So I mean that's I guess what's I mean I don't really know what's the difference between a Teal voter and a Greens voter. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe the rich don't vote Greens at all, but I mean there's this sort of like belief that the filthy rich vote Greens. I could be wrong about that. I need to do more research about that. If you write in the comments, answer that question. Do the filthy rich vote for the Greens? Because I actually don't know. Anyway, so let's go over some seats. So we've got the division of Cunningham. This seat voted yes on the voice referendum. It's very, I mean, it's not that strange. It's just this. It's just in Wollongong, and the Greens have like 22% here. You know, if the Liberals get more of a swing against them, the Greens could get up to second place. And then it's all about, you know, whether these minor parties, which are mostly right-wing parties, actually. I mean, who knows who'll stand next time, but including the Liberal Party, because they'll be in third place, how they would preference, you know, Greens or Labour. Labour would probably win. It's probably not something that the Greens will pick up, but you know, that's just one option for them. Another option is another seat that won the voice referendum in that seat, if I can get to it, and that is the division of Perth. So this is also sort of like a long ball for the Greens. I don't think they'll be focusing towards this seat, but definitely one in the future, maybe. Greens are on 22%. Liberals got absolutely wrecked last time, so maybe they won't be able to get the Liberals down any more than this, like 12% swing. Like, can you really get the Liberals down more than that? Where the Greens can get into second place? I don't know. But they got close last time, so once again, you got a lot of right-wing minor parties here. So would they really preference the Greens over Labour? I don't know. So that's two sort of those are kind of the outlier. I mean, I guess there's one more seat which is also sort of an outlier, but you know, maybe it's possible, and that's the division of Canberra. Greens got second place here. They're pretty far off in the two-party preferred, but maybe, I don't know if they ran a really strong campaign, but you know, I guess like Canberra is full of like public servants and stuff like that. They love Labour Party, so it's probably not one. I mean, they're very progressive, but there's two. I think it's just too many public servants, so they love the Labour Party. So I don't think that's probably going to happen anytime soon, but that's definitely one to look at. So the seats where people sort of believe that the Greens have somewhat of a real, I mean, as we talk about for ages, the division of Cooper used to be the division of Batman. I hated that they changed the name because I really liked that name, but it's the division of Cooper. The Greens have had some trouble in the last couple of years. They got very close, I think like 10 years ago or something. But they've gone back a bit. They got a swing towards the last election of 6%, but they're still pretty far off. This is the kind of seat that maybe, with some grassroots strength, money, maybe like a strong campaign about, how Labour Party don't care about renters or poor people or something like that. Or, I don't know. I don't know how much people care about like the environment and shit in a seat like this, division of Cooper, or like the fact that the Labour Party, did the voice referendum. Maybe that's enough for them. Maybe they don't want to go to the Greens. Maybe the voice referendum is enough for the Greens to lose these seats, but I doubt it. I think the Greens probably, once they've got these seats, they're pretty much solid. They're kind of like the Teals. Once they've got these seats, it's hard to get rid of them. So I think even though, I mean, the Greens were very big in somewhat in support of the quite strongly in support of the voice. There was some drama about it, like what order do you do it in, the treaty and the truth and all that kind of stuff. But they're relatively big supporters of the voice. So maybe it won't really be a big of a deal. But maybe people in these seats look at Labour and say, hey, you guys, you tried this voice thing. You're very strong with it. Your campaign was a bit meh, but maybe I don't think so. I think the Greens will hang on to these seats personally. So, but yeah, in a seat like there's Aston. Why are we there? In a seat like Cooper, which the Victorian Socialists only got 3.4. That's disappointing. That's the kind of thing that the Greens will be targeting. Also, a seat like Macadamara, which has also been one that has been long being talked about as a possible one for the Greens. This last time they didn't even get into second place after preferences, so we would have to they'd have to do that. And then of course there's like the seat of Wills, which is kind of like Cooper except not as strong for them. But last time they got around a similar amount. And then there's the seat of Higgins, which was talked about as a possible Green seat a couple of elections ago, but it ended up going to Labour in the end. The Greens are down here. Once again, I mean, the Liberal Party's primary vote is really high. You know, if that go, I don't know. I don't think the Greens. I mean, it basically would just end up having to be between the Greens versus Liberals, or Labour versus Liberals. It wouldn't be Labour versus Greens. So somehow the Greens would have to get over Labour. I don't know how they're going to do that, but yeah. I mean, that's. Are there any more seats that the Greens can really target? I don't know. Like, all of these seats are sort of like, they're kind of too socially conservative. Or in the case like Maribyrnong or Grainler or Sydney, they have a really prominent local member. This one it's Bill Shorten. And the Greens just, they can't really do anything there because, there's the local member is just too powerful. So I don't think the Greens have got much else to go on apart from those. The Teals have made their mark in seats like Kooyong and Goldstein, which possibly could have gone Green in some circumstance. I think the Teals kind of, they knew what they would do. They're kind of the right pick for those kind of seats, I think, than the Greens. Unfortunately, I think the Greens just, there's too many pearl clutches in those seats for them to really probably go Green. So I mean, that's it. Greens will have their 4 seats. Maybe if they really target one seat, like they target McNamara or Cooper or Wills or, I don't know, Cunningham, which they did actually win Cunningham. If I have it still here, they did win it once upon a time in a by-election. So it can be done. I don't think they're very strong in Newcastle, which also voted yes. Newcastle sort of, I don't like. We'll have a look at that one, but yes, it was done once upon a time. The Greens did win Cunningham. Oh yeah, well, they can get in the second place, and I mean it's a similar sort of story, but can they? I don't think they can win it from the Labour Party is just too strong, and the preferences that they'll need to get, it's not good company, not good company. So yeah, the Greens, it's very difficult for them now. I mean, I didn't expect them to win those 3 Queensland seats. I saw that them getting ahead in some polling in Queensland where they were up to like 15, 16% or something in Queensland, or 14%, something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I saw that big model that was a couple of days before the election, which had the Greens in reaching distance in those 3 seats. And I was like, oh, okay, well, holy shit. And then I saw there was a website which showed a percentage chance of the Greens winning seats, and it had them on 10% or something like that, or 20% or something like that. I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe. And then when they won those 3 seats, it was a really big deal. So maybe it could happen again. I don't exactly know how they won those seats. It just seems so weird that in a state like Queensland, the Greens just won 3 seats in one election. I don't know how they did it. I really don't know how they did it. I guess, and I don't know what the deal is with Queensland, where they have 3 Green seats in the city, and then the rest of Queensland is just crazy. So, yeah, very very odd. Maybe they have struck gold somehow, and they can replicate a next election in some Victorian, in some inner Melbourne seats. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe the rental crisis will get so bad that they will be able to take Labour to town with that stuff. I don't know. Okay, we are going to leave it there for this video. It's already long enough. We talked all about the House of Representatives, how each party have a chance to gain or lose seats. So next video we will be finishing off this midterm predictions by talking specifically about the Senate. So I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.